How's it going, everyone? This is Mike, and I'm here to do a response to my friend Forkerball, also known as Ian, who has come up with a couple of questions for a weekly chat. And I don't know if this is actually going to be every week or not, but maybe we can do this every once in a while. He came up with a couple of good questions. And the first one has to do with what is it that helps us to decide what movies we will go and see at the cinema, in the theater? What is it that will actually prompt us to get up out of our little comfortable houses here and go to the movies? So a lot of answers to that question. And it might be easier for me to start out by saying what I don't do. And what I do not do is go out and see the newest release films the first weekend that they come out or the first night. I'm not one of these people that wants to go out and be the first one in line and camp out and all that nonsense. It's not important for me to see something that comes out the first weekend. I'm very happy to wait 2 or 3 weeks when the crowds start to die down and I can have a little bit more of a quiet experience, not being in a real crowded theater. Now that has not always been true. I can remember back in the 70s there were a lot of films that we all got excited about, and we would line up all the way down the street and around the block to go see. May not have been the first weekend. I don't think that I've ever done that, but there were a lot of films that I was excited about seeing, and they were in crowded theaters, and it made it even more exciting. Films like The Exorcist back in 1973, films like Earthquake, The Towering Inferno, Superman, Star Wars, the first Alien movie, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Those were films that we all lined up to see, and it was pretty exciting. Carrie in 1976. That was one of the best crowded theater experiences I've ever had in my life. I will never forget it. So, yeah, my feelings about going to the movies have changed over the years, and I do like to have things be a little more subdued and quiet. But every once in a while, I go into a theater and see something relatively new, and it's a lot of people there. And if they behave, that's fine. But yeah, generally, I like to wait a while. I don't go to see the new comic book films. I really have no interest in them. Now, obviously, back in the 70s and early 80s, I did like to see films like that. I generally avoid action films. I don't like films with a lot of violence. Um, let's see. People who know me on YouTube and on Facebook know that I talk a lot about going to see old films at some of my local theaters. I'm very lucky to have two theaters in town, one of which is owned by the City Park District, and one which is an independently owned theater. And they both not only show, well, one of the theaters, the Art Theater, shows a lot of new films that may not make it to the local multiplex, foreign films, lowercase releases, independent type films. So I try to see a lot of those. But the Movie Palace, the Virginia, they show revival films all the time. And for example, last night I went to see Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, okay, which I had only seen once all the way through. It's been a long, long time, and I had a wonderful evening. It was absolutely wonderful to see it on a big screen like that. And I do go to see a lot of older films whenever I can. The local newspaper, the News Gazette, they sponsor one movie a month at the Virginia Theater. And last month they showed this fantastic Cary Grant, Irene Dunn comedy called The Awful Truth, which was released in 1937 or 1938. I had never seen it before. It was absolutely fantastic. I laughed myself sick. A lot of people there, people of all ages, and it was a great night at the movies. Next month they're showing Casablanca, which of course I've seen many, many times. I will go see it again. And yeah, I try to go see old films whenever they come out. Now, a couple of years ago when I was still working, and of course I've always worked at nights, so there were a lot of movies that I missed that may be showing for just one night during the week. So um, now I don't have to miss them. But I remember that a couple of years ago, the Art Theater showed The Night of the Hunter for one night, and it was on a Wednesday or Thursday night. So I had plenty of notice, and I actually took a vacation day so that I could go to the movies. And this was something I'd seen many, many times. I knew every line of dialogue and everything that was going to happen before it happened. But seeing it on the big screen, it was exciting and it was wonderful. So yeah, I will go for that kind of experience whenever I possibly can. Even though it's something that I can get on home video, something I have on the shelf, I will still go to see it in the theater. So that is mainly what I go for. I sometimes go to my local multiplex and I get intrigued by something I see in the previews. That happened a while ago with a film called Money Monster, which was directed by Jodie Foster, starring Julie Roberts and George Clooney. I saw the previews twice and thought this really looks like a good movie. And I went to see it. I'm very glad that I did. It was a perfect combination of action, story, character development, and a very strong message. Very, very good movie. So that's one thing that got me going. Usually the previews, I just kind of ignore them because it's just a bunch of noise and I don't really care to see all the explosions going on the screen. But this was something very different. So yeah, that's another thing that will get me going in the theater. Word of mouth, people that I know around town that go to the movies a lot, they might tell me, you've got to see this. This is something that's right up your alley. And a lot of times when people will tell me, don't go see this, you'll hate it. It's full of blood, it's full of fighting, you will not like this movie. So I generally listen. I pay attention to local film critics and kind of take their advice sometimes. And usually I'm very pleased by what I see when I go to the movies. So I guess my movie going habits have changed over the years, but yeah, I seem to be, now that I'm retired, I have more time on my hands. I spend more time at the movies. Now we have two multiplexes here in Champaign-Urbana, and they both have IMAX. I have never been to an IMAX film. I keep saying I'm going to do it one of these days, but I just haven't done it yet. I don't go to see 3D movies. Just don't do it. And I don't know. It's not something that I find terribly exciting. Okay, so that's my answer to the first question. The second question is about why do we collect what we collect? Okay, what is it that convinces us to buy something and have it on the shelf in our TV room? So a lot of answers to that question too. Now there are a lot of things, a lot of directors, a lot of actors that I'm interested in, and I will pay top retail prices to get their work. I won't even blink about how much it costs. Here's a good example. I bought this John Cassavetes box set when it first came out. I found this at Best Buy, paid top price for it. I think it was around $59 if I remember correctly. Of course, it's a Criterion edition collection. And so things like that I will pay top money for. I will pay top money for films starring Bette Davis, a lot of her box sets. A lot of her films are now being discounted, but I already own them. I paid high prices for them, not complaining because I'm glad that I got them. The same way with the film noir box sets that were put out by Warner Home Video. I think there were 5 or 6 of those box sets. I paid top price at Best Buy or Borders Bookstore or someplace like that, simply because I knew that I wanted them and I wasn't going to wait. So anyway, a lot of the films that I have in my collection, I have not because of some intellectual decision, but because they were cheap, to be quite honest with you. A lot of the films I picked up when I discovered Big Lots a couple of years ago, which is a discount store here in the United States, and I didn't even know this place existed. Well, I knew it existed, but I didn't know they were selling DVDs for $3. And I couldn't believe it. So I started bringing home stacks of movies, some of which I knew very little about, some of which I did know. But for a cheap price like that, I can afford to experiment a little. And that's why I have a lot of the films on my shelves, because I bought them only because they were cheap. If they had been normal prices, which is $15 or $20, I probably wouldn't have bought them. And it's the same with some of the directors and actors that I ended up collecting that I probably would not have bought if they were not discounted, discount prices. A good example is Woody Allen. Now, I've talked a lot about Woody Allen's films. I'm a big fan of his, and I just counted what I have. I have 43 of Woody Allen's films, most of which are films that he directed. There are 1 or 2 that he only acted in. For example, a film called The Front, which he did not write and he did not direct, but he gave a good performance in it. That's a very good film. So I consider that to be one of his films. And anyway, so back in the 70s, I used to see a lot of Woody Allen's films and really enjoyed them. Films like Sleeper, Love and Death, certainly Annie Hall, Interiors, his very first serious film. I saw all those movies when they first came out and loved them. Of course, that was way before the advent of home video. And so years later, in the early 2000s, I think, I started getting a lot of catalogs from places like Movies Unlimited. Movies Unlimited. Let me take a drink of water here, folks. Movies Unlimited and Oldies.com that were showing all these discounted prices for a lot of pretty good movies. And I ended up buying a lot of Woody Allen's films because they were discounted in price. They were $5, $6, $7 a piece. So I was buying things that I had not seen for 30 years, films like Interiors. Saw it again with fresh eyes, absolutely loved it. So, I mean, now it's one of my all-time favorite films, and I began to collect Woody Allen in earnest, and I started paying top retail prices for his newer stuff because I had fallen in love with his work as a director. So that's one thing that got me to collecting. It wasn't always a really mature decision. It had to do with, hey, I can get these for cheap. So that's how it all started. Now, another thing that got me into collecting different things, things that I remembered from when I was a kid, either films that I did see or films that I didn't see, but I remembered something about them. Case in point, Seconds, starring Rock Hudson, directed by John Frankenheimer, which came out in 1966. I never saw the film, but I remember the poster, which had this image of Rock Hudson's face. I remember seeing it on the theater marquee. I remember seeing it in the newspapers back when they used to have almost full-page ads of, a full page of different ads showing the movie posters for films that were playing in local theaters. They really don't have that anymore. But back then, you could become familiar with a movie poster just by seeing it in the paper. So flash forward, this DVD release came out in 2001. I saw this on the shelf at Borders Bookstore. When Borders opened a bookstore in Champaign, it became my second home, and I was always looking at. They had great selections of movies, so I was always looking at things and buying more than I really had the money for. But I pulled this off the shelf, and I remembered that poster. So I just bought it because I was fascinated by it. Now I have the chance to take it home and watch it in peace and quiet. Absolutely fell in love with it. It's now one of my favorite films of all time, and I talk about it a lot. So that's one thing that happened. Another thing that happened is, going back to Bette Davis's films. Now I'm not a big collector of Blu-rays. I know a lot of people are just very excited about the whole Blu-ray phenomenon, and that's great. And I have a small collection of Blu-rays, probably no more than this. A lot of them were given to me, and a lot of them I bought because they had features on them. They were films I already owned on DVD, but they had features that I could only get on Blu-rays, so I bought the Blu-rays. And sometimes the Blu-rays get very cheap, which is why I bought this copy of All About Eve. This little, what do you call these, digibooks, I guess. I found this at Big Lots. It was on sale for $5. I had seen this on the shelf at Barnes & Noble when it first came out, and it was kind of expensive. And by then I had a Blu-ray player. But I always go for DVDs, not only because I like the lower prices, but because DVDs are fine with me. And I like the imagery on DVDs. I have no complaints. And I don't generally look for Blu-rays. I look for DVDs. But this was so cheap, I figured why not. So now, even though I have, I think, 3 other versions of this on DVD, now I also have it on Blu-ray. And it's beautiful. I'm very glad that I have it. But it would not have been my first choice. If it had not been cheap, I don't think I would have bought it. So my collecting, I tend to look for a lot of really obscure stuff that a lot of people don't talk about, and those choices will probably be covered in later videos. But that kind of gives you an idea of how my collecting got started and where it's taken me. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope you found this somewhat informative and somewhat enjoyable. And I would love to hear what you think. So thank you.